Hey everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, everybody, this is now the eighth episode of the Power Within series. Today's topic emotions, good or bad. So, as you can see, I'm filming in my car. Just needed a little bit more peace and quiet, so here we are. So, anyways, as we have been talking about, the power of God is within you, God created you, and it is about us understanding that and letting the power of God go and move through us. And the only people that block our potential is essentially ourselves. And so today's topic is emotions, and this is something that I've done a lot of work in the counseling background, helping clients clean up, if I could say, this emotional space. Oftentimes, we think of the brain being one thing and then the heart is the emotions. Those are like ways that when kids maybe draw pictures, that's how um we differentiate that. But the reality is, we know this, that the brain is actually the part that holds the component, the department of the emotions, and that's in that mid brain area called the limbic system. And inside the limbic system, a tiny little almond-shaped, little part of the brain, that's the amygdala, and um, that's part of the brain that knows fear and emotion, at least that's what scientists say for now. So here's the thing, when we are, developing, here's a little scientific recap. When kids are born, babies, newborn infants, let's pretend this is the brain. So this is my brain stem if I'm looking this way, okay? This brain stem goes into, my spinal cord, and there's something called let's just call it brainstem, hindbrain, backbrain. It's also known as the reptilian brain. That is purely reflex. You put a finger in a kid's hand, they go like that. Suckling for food. There are certain automatic reflexes that you have that are good. Then as the child starts to experience life experiences and matures and grows, then the midbrain starts to develop, because with experiences, like let's say me driving with mom and dad, like that could driving could be a peaceful experience, and driving could be extremely crazy and chaotic and scary and life threatening. And so the brain starts to take data about experiences based off of the emotions that we have. That's that interpretation, the experience that we interpret, right? Perception is reality. That's what we do. And then with that, as we age, hopefully, this front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, starts to develop, which is thinking, cognition, judgment, wisdom, decision making, problem solving, executive skills. Obviously, adolescents working at a high school, I mean, it's like their midbrain, and the brain develops literally back, middle to the front. They're young, and if a brain is still developing by mid 20s, the problem is there are kids making extremely emotional, hormonal decisions with a prefrontal cortex that's not yet developed, which is exactly why it's necessary to have people like mentors, adults, teachers, coaches, counselors that help use their prefrontal cortex to help kids make decisions. But today we're talking about emotions, and the reason why that is so important is for us to recognize your emotional experience is very valid for you. However, it doesn't have to be reality. Let me explain. Um, Doing counseling work for many, many years, talk therapy, I mean, it's good, but I noticed that I didn't know how to help people heal on a much deeper level, because logically a lot of times we can say, yeah, I know this, I know, but it's the emotional experience that makes things feel very real and very raw. What do I mean about that? For instance, I could drive with someone I can drive with someone and say, driving, yeah, I know driving is not bad, driving is not scary with everyone all the time, but the timing of this is impeccable. Um, but if your body is experiencing fear, you're frightened, your anxiety, your physiology, so the reptilian part of the brain, that's your body. So you start to panic, your blood level, or pupils dilated, your adrenaline is going. That's the part of you that's a lot harder to manage. Because I could like logically recognize and even rationalize, yeah, not everyone's a crazy driver. But if your experiences have been driving is, I almost die every time. I've had clients I've worked with that are like way later in their life and still like get so scared driving because of a car accident that they had, or they grew up with a family member who was horrendous at driving or whatever the issue was. And so there are procedures. I mean, if you're interested in counseling, I like anything somatic. So for instance, brain spotting or EMDR, that type of stuff is very helpful to help people reprocess emotions connected to experiences. And when we go through certain traumatic, scary events, we have to process that because trauma is what's trauma for you. No one can tell you driving in a car is not scary. If it's traumatic for you, then that's your reality and that's how your body is responding. And any kind of like counseling, or let's just say healing procedure treatment, you are going back, like trauma, you just go back into those situations, you reprocess. Okay, not every person is a scary driver, and I actually haven't really been hurt, or you do what you need to do to find whatever peace, whatever story starts to give you peace, so closure, and then you'd be surprised the same emotions triggers are not going to be activated anymore when you are in the next situation. I remember one time I had a client who would just get so scared driving when she was in the passenger seat because she grew up with a dad who was just crazy driving because he was, probably drunk half the time. When she'd be sitting in the passenger seat, if something got too scary for her, she'd just be in the passenger seat pumping the brakes with her foot, like imaginary brakes. And that's that that anxiety, that physiology acts up as if it's trauma, as if it's there, as if you're in that situation again. Because the brain doesn't like to play games, especially the more survival the trauma was, the more the brain's like, we're not playing that game. We're not going to even risk it. And so your physiology starts to act up. Um, I'm just going to ignore that. Anyways, so what happens with emotions, or when I'm working with clients that have a lot of, okay, balance, emotions aren't necessarily good or bad. I mean, they just are. Let's just think of something neutral. We are the one that have experiences that either make it good or bad, or our perceptions decide if something is good or bad, which means um let me think of another example. Mm, I could even say relationships, right? Some people can have some not great experiences in relationships or friendships. They feel hurt, they feel betrayed. That's going to be the emotional space that comes up next time they have a person or having like a connection or whatever. Or if you have really good friends, really good experiences with people you're loved, you feel like there's a belonging, you're respected, you're going to do a whole lot better in relationships because your emotions are good. You feel peace, you feel joy. By the way, there's something called primary emotions, which is love, joy. Oh man, I'm forgetting. Um, Love, joy, surprise, fear, disgust. There's a couple primary emotions that most people like look at cross culturally, like they're the same for everyone. And then there's something called secondary emotions, which is um let's say depression or frustration or irritation. So sometimes when people report they feel something on the, like, again, depression or irritation, oftentimes there's a deeper, more primal emotion coming up. So again, emotions have the ability to add a lot of richness to your life, joy, excitement, experience, like you love certain things. But if you've had a bad experience, it doesn't mean everything is bad around that topic, let's say relationships or a car or whatever, whatever experience you've had. It's up to us to reprocess so we get to a space of at least neutral and have good experiences, emotional experiences. So, um, yeah, so when clients come to me, I have people who oftentimes there's a spectrum. If all is well, no one's seeing me. That's with like at least with counseling. But then I have two sides: people that are completely numbed out and like dissociated, won't feel, don't feel emotions, like they're not there, or people who are on the other side where they're hypersensitive. They feel everything, things come up, they're already crying. I look at it as like it's like emotions are good when the pipe is flowing like plumbing. However, when it's blocked, it's like a sewage system, it's overfilling, it's we need to clean it up. And when I'm, let's say, have clients that every little thing starts to like make them emotional, or they're upset or they're triggered, all that tells me is there are raw wounds that we need to go assess, address, and then start like a healing process. What does that look like with coaching? That means, again, if a person's triggered, they have an emotional experience about something. Like I've had clients in session, something coming up during session. They're bothered. That that is a good thing. Like Holy Spirit is bringing up an emotion to let you know a trigger. This is something that still needs attention so that you can heal, so that it doesn't have to get in the way and bother you, or get in the way of you having like fulfilling fun life experiences. It's like, by the way, I wanted to say this with triggers. It's crazy because a trigger is anything that reminds you consciously, subconsciously. Think about it like an insane code, like your eyes are like little cameras and your brain is a like hard drive. You will be surprised how many times I've processed with clients, and it's the tiniest little details that the subconscious remembers to protect you from future experiences and future pains, hurts. So, for instance, let's pretend I'm gonna make this up, the last three times you were yelled at by someone, they were wearing, I don't know, a black watch or something, and that was a painful experience. If I'm gonna walk by and be like, "Oh, hi, blah, blah, blah," you'd be surprised how maybe agitated, upset, like paranoid you would feel. And half the time, people don't even know why. Like, who would know that a black watch just triggered them? But that's literally like how amazing your brain is, and it computes that data. And it's like, black watch, last three times people had a black watch, they yelled at you and hurt your feelings, and you were super upset about it. Okay. And so that's where the devil is a liar. He's going to try to make and twist and pervert everything. Oh, I know that person. Every time I see a person driving a Lexus or a Cadillac, they're X, Y, and Z. Yeah, because those were your experiences. Again, your emotions. And I never want to invalidate a person for their experience, but I'm going to challenge and say it doesn't have to be like this. Like, not like, especially when I'm working with people that are paranoid or angry or distrusting of everything. My question is, what's happened that you are like this? And maybe back in the day when you were younger or whenever, when you were growing up, it served its purpose. But right now, it's only getting in the way because now you're negative Nancy. No one wants anything to do with you. And you're just saying, I'm just on guard. And it's like, no, you have wounds that have never been healed. And now this stuff is in the way of you experiencing joy and freedom. And the worst thing is, we know this about the brain. If you're in this constant state of threat and danger, you're always going to continue to find threat and danger because you're always going to misperceive it. And what you're looking for, you will find. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. And then the other thing about that is, when you're in a constant, like, sensitive, hypersensitive state, fight, flight, freeze, all that I talk about in my previous videos, you can't play, you can't learn, you can't relax, you can't connect with people. Even your physiological body isn't healthy. Your immune system becomes compromised, and the list continues and continues. And so emotions can absolutely enrich your life and make it fun and joyful and beautiful. And it's crazy to think that another person can have very similar life experiences, and like later on, or similar life experiences, a current one, and they just perceive it as bad, and they're agitated, they're angry, and they are distrusting. And so, for all of you, triggers, check what triggers you, what makes you upset, what type of comments. And by the way, here's how it works. Here's how trauma works. It's not just a negative emotion. Like, let's go back to the car situation. Let's say you grew up with a family, they're just crazy drivers, and it was always scary. And they're yelling at you in the car. That whole thing is already scary because it's like a survival thing. Plus, plus, the brain really likes to calculate and be like, what's going on? We need a reason. Why are they doing this? And especially when we're little and our brain isn't developed, prefrontal cortex isn't developed, we think of really sad reasons, inaccurate reasons as to why something's happening. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I'm, annoying. I'm always in danger. I'm a disappointment. Like, it's almost like any reason for the brain, even a bad reason, is better than no reason because it likes to like have some kind of foundation as to understand what's going on and why, because we really love to learn and figure things out and problem solve. And that's not a bad thing, but it's like, ladies and gentlemen, like, I don't know, we see the chaos in the world. We see how parents sometimes really fail their kids. I've worked with kids where it's like, how am I supposed to explain to a 6-year-old their parent has insane, just deep, let's say, mental health problems or substance use issues or whatever else, bad attachment styles. How do you explain that to a kid? They don't get it. And so they just, internalize, oh, I'm not good enough. Whether you consciously know what that message is at 6 years old or not, your brain already did the math. And that's a lot of reprocessing I do in counseling, but you bet in coaching that stuff comes up. I don't go as deep in coaching. I'll give you all the resources you need to like pinpoint, these again, brain codes that aren't working well for you, but we all have stuff to heal and clean up. So anyways, of course, if you have questions, you can even leave it in the comment and I will respond later. What else do I have to tell you about emotions? I think the thing that I'm gonna wrap up with is you guys would be surprised how oftentimes our, even though perception is reality, so like what you believe and what you think is your reality, you guys would be surprised how inaccurate we are oftentimes. And then sometimes, unfortunately, like we say, oh, it's a spiritual gift I have. I'm right. So like for instance, like let's say a person, again, let's use the watch situation. I'm here on YouTube talking, blah blah blah, sharing my heart, trying to be genuine, and someone sees this watch, and they might not even consciously know that they are now triggered. They feel threatened. They feel scared because again, maybe what if the last three people that were mean to them had black watches, or worse, they'd hit them. And now your brain is like, alert, alert. This data, the code comes up, and it sends your brain the information that, Yelena is bad, or I'm having bad vibes about Yelena. And you guys wouldn't even guess that's just like a trigger from past stuff connected to trauma. Has nothing to do with Yelena. It has everything to do with this item or the color of it or something just simple. And that's where a lot of people perceive and misperceive incorrectly. And only the more healed we are, the more we can make more fair, accurate assessments and judgments about things, especially when we're, again, out of a state of paranoia, flight, fight, freeze. And when you're in peace and rest, literally your heart, your brain is cleared out, your lens, you can interpret things a lot better. Another thing I wanted to say is actually when I would do counseling work, it's like if you sit with the person and you're like, well, what about Elena? Do you think is bad? You saw that YouTube video. What's going on? And most people in what their front part of their brain will sit there and think like, I have no real data. I don't even know her. I mean, all her videos are pretty positive. I don't know. You won't even know until there are some techniques that, again, trauma treatment stuff I've learned where you sit with it, you tap into what emotion came up, and you really sit with it, and you would be surprised what starts to come up. And that's when I have clients that are like, oh my gosh, Black Watch. That subconscious stuff starts to float to the surface. And then you guys have to like reprocess some stuff until you start to realize logically, of course, not Black Watch means nothing, it's the type of person. Oh, okay. And then we do better at healing and then having boundaries like my other video. So Emotions are amazing. If you're triggered, okay, no problem. That's just letting you know you got some healing to do. Join the club, all of us. And emotions really, traumatic experiences, emotions, all of that really it just taps into these underlying negative statements about ourselves. I'm not lovable. I'm always betrayed. I can't trust people. People reject me. It's that, if I could say, crap, that fundamental stuff we're working through. And oftentimes that message, negative identity message, is woven into and connected to many, many, many of your unfortunate life experiences. And I was even reflecting on this recently, like, let's say some of the things I've struggled with even like with rejection. I'm like, dang, it's like that concept, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And although I believe like we are all born into some kind of background or life experiences that like all of a sudden like encodes rejection or whatever, the problem is then that the brain gets stuck in a loop and tries to make it valid every time, like recreates it. And then that's where we start to sabotage and we make ourselves, if I could say, rejectable or literally a reject. And so everyone has healing, and y'all know that I say it all the time. Emotions are a very beautiful thing, and the more people get healed, the less paranoid and perverted and negative and all that we can get. So, anyways, emotions, they're a very beautiful thing, but it's a very powerful, powerful tool. And when the more you live in a level of just peace, people talk about things like visualization and feel it and believe it. And it's true. Like, if you really believe you are blessed, you are abundantly, like, prosperous and blessed, and God's got you and God's good and you're a child of God and the royal blood like goes through your veins. Like if you really, really feel and believe it and challenge anything that comes up against it, then you'll be surprised how beautiful your life starts to unfold. But we'll talk more about that in our next episode, limiting beliefs. So I hope that this was helpful. Always really fun topic when I get to teach the deeper psychology about this. So that's emotions for today, and that's a wrap. God bless you all, and I hope to have you join for the next video. But like, comment, subscribe. I love when you guys do that. God bless you.